My dear seekers of psychological truth, I am Sigmund Freud, and today I wish to share with you something that has occupied my analytical mind for decades. You see, in my years of studying the human psyche, I have observed a phenomenon that defies conventional understanding of attraction. There are women who possess an almost mystical magnetism, a psychological allure that transcends the superficial realm of physical beauty. These women understand, whether consciously or unconsciously, the deeper mechanisms of the human mind and how to activate the most primitive and powerful drives within those around them. Perhaps you have witnessed this yourself. You have encountered a woman who, while perhaps not conventionally beautiful by society's standards, commands attention the moment she enters a room. Men become inexplicably drawn to her presence, hanging on her every word, competing for her attention in ways that seem almost primal. Women, too, find themselves either deeply admiring her or experiencing an uncomfortable jealousy they cannot quite explain. This is not mere charisma or confidence, though these may be components. What I am describing runs much deeper, into the very core of human psychological functioning, into those hidden chambers of the mind where our most fundamental desires and fears reside. The tragedy I have observed in my clinical practice is that most women remain completely unaware of these powerful psychological principles. They chase after fleeting trends, focus obsessively on their physical appearance, or attempt to manipulate through obvious means, all while missing the profound truth that true psychological magnetism operates on an entirely different level. It functions in the realm of the unconscious, where the most powerful human motivations dwell, where decisions are made before the conscious mind even realizes what has occurred. Today I will reveal to you 5 specific psychological habits that create this irresistible magnetism. These are not superficial techniques or manipulative tricks, but deep psychological principles that tap into the fundamental structure of human desire and attachment. When a woman embodies these habits, she becomes not just attractive, but psychologically necessary to those around her. She fulfills unconscious needs that others may not even realize they possess, creating a form of psychological dependency that is both powerful and enduring. Before we begin this exploration, I want you to consider this question. Have you ever found yourself inexplicably drawn to someone, unable to explain why you think about them constantly, why their approval seems so important, why their absence creates an almost physical discomfort? This is the power of psychological magnetism at work, and understanding it will transform not only how others perceive you, but how you understand the very nature of human attraction and influence. The first habit that creates this irresistible magnetism is what I call the cultivation of psychological mystery. You see, the human mind is fundamentally driven by what I have termed the pleasure principle, but this principle operates in a far more complex manner than most people understand. We are not simply drawn to that which gives us immediate pleasure, but rather to that which promises pleasure while maintaining an element of the unknown, the unexplored, the mysterious. A psychologically irresistible woman understands that the moment she becomes completely predictable, completely known, she loses a significant portion of her psychological power. She maintains layers of complexity, revealing aspects of herself gradually, strategically, always leaving something more to be discovered. This is not about being deceptive or manipulative, but rather about understanding that the human psyche is most engaged when it is actively working to solve a puzzle, to understand something that remains partially hidden. Consider how this operates in the unconscious mind. When we encounter someone who is completely transparent, whose thoughts and reactions we can predict with certainty, the unconscious mind categorizes them as solved, understood, no longer requiring active psychological investment. But when someone maintains psychological depth and mystery, the unconscious mind remains engaged, continues to invest energy in trying to understand and predict them. This creates what I call psychological addiction, a compulsive need to continue engaging with this person in order to satisfy the mind's drive to understand and possess. The psychologically magnetic woman reveals her thoughts and feelings selectively. She shares deeply personal insights, but not all at once. She expresses vulnerability, but maintains boundaries. She shows interest in others, while maintaining her own independence of thought and action. Most importantly, she understands that every interaction should leave the other person with questions, with curiosity, with a desire to know more. I have observed that women who practice this habit often do so instinctively, having learned through experience that complete emotional availability often leads to being taken for granted. They have discovered, perhaps without fully understanding the psychological mechanisms involved, that maintaining some element of the unknown keeps others psychologically engaged and emotionally invested. The second habit involves what I call strategic emotional availability. This principle operates on one of the most fundamental aspects of human psychology, our relationship with love, approval, and emotional validation. You see, human beings are driven by two seemingly contradictory needs. We desperately want emotional connection and validation, but we also fear engulfment, the loss of our individual identity through complete emotional merger with another. A woman who understands this psychological paradox becomes irresistible by being emotionally available in ways that provide deep satisfaction while never threatening the other person's sense of individual autonomy. She offers genuine empathy and understanding, but maintains clear emotional boundaries. She celebrates others' successes without diminishing her own accomplishments. She provides comfort during difficult times without becoming emotionally dependent herself. This habit requires a sophisticated understanding of what I call emotional timing. The psychologically magnetic woman recognizes when someone needs emotional support and when they need space to process independently. She can sense when her presence would be welcomed and when it might feel intrusive. This sensitivity to emotional rhythms creates a sense that she truly understands others at a deep level, that she can meet their emotional needs without creating additional burdens or expectations. What makes this so psychologically powerful is that it satisfies both the conscious desire for emotional connection and the unconscious fear of losing oneself in relationship. When someone experiences this balanced emotional availability, they feel both understood and free, both connected and autonomous. This creates a psychological state that they will inevitably want to return to again and again. I have noticed that women who master this habit often have done significant psychological work on themselves. They understand their own emotional patterns and needs, which allows them to be present for others without projecting their own unresolved psychological conflicts. They have learned to regulate their own emotional states, which creates a sense of stability and safety that others find deeply attractive. Now, before we continue exploring these fascinating psychological principles, I want to pause and ask you something very important. As I share these insights with you, I wonder if you have ever felt truly heard, truly understood in your deepest psychological experiences. Have you encountered someone who could see beyond the surface of your words to the deeper emotional truths you were expressing? How did it feel to be in the presence of someone who could meet you at that level of psychological depth? I ask because I believe that many of you watching this understand, perhaps more than you realize, what it means to hunger for genuine psychological connection. You have experienced relationships where you felt misunderstood, where your deeper emotional needs were overlooked or dismissed. You have encountered people who seemed interested only in what you could provide for them, rather than who you truly are beneath all the social masks and protective mechanisms we all develop. If any of this resonates with you, I want you to do something right now. In the comments below, simply write the phrase "understanding matters." You do not need to explain or elaborate. This simple phrase will serve two important purposes. First, it will signal to me and to others in this community that you recognize the value of deep psychological insight in creating meaningful connections. Second, it will serve as a form of psychological commitment, a way of acknowledging to yourself that you are ready to move beyond superficial approaches to relationship and attraction. I want you to know that when you leave this comment, you are joining a community of individuals who understand that true psychological magnetism comes not from manipulation or techniques, but from developing a genuine understanding of how the human mind works and how to create authentic connections that satisfy our deepest psychological needs. Your comment also helps this content reach others who may be struggling with the same questions about attraction, connection, and psychological influence that brought you here today. The third habit that creates irresistible psychological magnetism is what I term the practice of intellectual seduction. Now, when I use the word seduction here, I am not referring to anything overtly sexual or manipulative. Rather, I am speaking of the profound psychological satisfaction that occurs when someone engages our mind in ways that stimulate our deepest intellectual curiosities and desires for growth and understanding. You see, one of the most overlooked aspects of human attraction is the mind's constant hunger for intellectual stimulation and challenge. We are drawn to those who can expand our understanding, who can introduce us to new ways of thinking, who can engage us in conversations that leave us feeling more intelligent and insightful than before. A psychologically irresistible woman understands this fundamental need and cultivates the ability to provide this form of mental satisfaction. This intellectual engagement operates on multiple psychological levels simultaneously. On the conscious level, we enjoy conversations with someone who challenges our thinking and introduces novel perspectives. But on the unconscious level, something even more powerful is occurring. When someone consistently provides intellectual stimulation, they become associated in our mind with personal growth and expansion. we begin to unconsciously view them as essential to our continued development as thinking beings. The woman who masters intellectual seduction does not necessarily need to be the most educated person in the room, though education certainly can be helpful. Instead, she cultivates genuine curiosity about ideas, people, and experiences. She asks questions that reveal depth of thought. She listens not just to respond, but to truly understand different perspectives. She shares insights that demonstrate original thinking, rather than simply repeating conventional wisdom. What makes this particularly powerful is how it affects the ego. When someone engages with us intellectually in meaningful ways, they make us feel intelligent and interesting. They reflect back to us a version of ourselves that we aspire to be, someone thoughtful and insightful and worth listening to. This creates what I call positive ego reinforcement, where being around this person consistently makes us feel better about ourselves in fundamental ways. I have observed that women who practice intellectual seduction often do so by developing what I call intellectual empathy. They have the ability to understand and engage with different types of intelligence and curiosity. They can discuss practical matters with someone who values concrete solutions, explore creative possibilities with someone who thinks imaginatively, or delve into theoretical concepts with someone who enjoys abstract thinking. This adaptability makes them intellectually valuable to a wide range of different personality types. The fourth habit involves mastering what I call selective validation. This principle draws upon some of the most fundamental aspects of human psychology, particularly our relationship with approval and recognition. You see, all human beings, regardless of how confident they may appear, harbor deep psychological needs for validation and approval. These needs often stem from early childhood experiences and remain active in the unconscious mind throughout our lives. However, most people make a critical psychological error when it comes to providing validation. They either withhold it entirely, believing that scarcity will create desire, or they provide it indiscriminately, thinking that constant approval will create positive feelings. Both approaches fail to understand the sophisticated way the human psyche processes validation and approval. A psychologically irresistible woman understands that validation is most powerful when it is both genuine and selective. She recognizes that indiscriminate praise becomes meaningless, while complete withholding of approval creates resentment and emotional distance. Instead, she develops the ability to identify and acknowledge the authentic strengths and positive qualities in others, but she does so strategically and meaningfully. This selective validation operates by targeting what I call core identity elements. Those aspects of self that people most want to be recognized and appreciated for. These are often qualities that individuals feel uncertain about, or that they value highly, but fear others might not notice or appreciate. When someone receives validation for these core aspects of their identity, the psychological impact is profound and lasting. The key to this habit lies in developing genuine observational skills and emotional intelligence. The psychologically magnetic woman learns to pay attention not just to what people say about themselves, but to what their behavior and choices reveal about their deeper values and aspirations. She notices when someone takes pride in their work, their relationships, their creative expressions, or their moral choices. She recognizes moments when someone is hoping for acknowledgement or support, and she provides it in ways that feel authentic rather than calculated. What makes selective validation so psychologically powerful is that it satisfies multiple unconscious needs simultaneously. It provides the approval and recognition that all humans crave, but it does so in a way that makes the recipient feel truly seen and understood. It also creates a sense that this person has special insight into their character and worth, which generates both gratitude and a desire for continued connection. I have noticed that women who excel at this habit often have developed it through their own experiences of receiving meaningful validation. They understand from personal experience how powerful it feels to be genuinely appreciated for qualities that matter to them, and they have learned to provide this same experience for others. The fifth, and perhaps most powerful habit, is what I call the embodiment of psychological safety with challenge. This principle operates on one of the deepest psychological needs human beings possess, the need to feel both secure and stimulated, both accepted and encouraged to grow. You see, most people in relationships experience either safety without growth or challenge without security. The psychologically irresistible woman creates a unique psychological environment where both needs are met simultaneously. Psychological safety means creating an emotional atmosphere where others feel they can be authentic without fear of judgment, rejection, or emotional punishment. It means demonstrating through consistent behavior that she can handle the full range of human emotions and experiences without withdrawing approval or becoming emotionally reactive. This safety allows others to relax their psychological defenses and show aspects of themselves they might normally keep hidden. But psychological safety alone, while comforting, can also become stagnant. The human mind needs challenge and stimulation to remain fully engaged. This is where the second component becomes crucial. The psychologically magnetic woman also provides appropriate challenge, encouraging others to expand their thinking, question their assumptions, and grow beyond their current limitations. She does this not through criticism or pressure, but through genuine curiosity about their potential and gentle encouragement toward growth. The combination of these elements creates what I call the optimal psychological climate for human connection. When people feel both safe and challenged in someone's presence, they experience a state of relaxed alertness that is both comfortable and exciting. They can be themselves while also being inspired to become more than they currently are. This habit requires sophisticated emotional regulation skills and a deep understanding of individual differences in how people process safety and challenge. Some individuals need more reassurance before they can handle challenge, while others become bored without sufficient intellectual or emotional stimulation. The psychologically irresistible woman develops sensitivity to these individual differences and adjusts her approach accordingly. What makes this so powerful from a psychological perspective is that it recreates the optimal conditions for human development and attachment. In healthy childhood development, children need both unconditional love and appropriate challenges to grow into emotionally mature adults. When an adult relationship provides this same combination, it satisfies some of our deepest psychological longings and creates powerful emotional bonds. I have observed that women who master this habit often possess what I call integrated emotional intelligence. They have learned to manage their own emotional reactions skillfully, which allows them to remain present and supportive even when others are expressing difficult emotions or going through challenging experiences. They have also developed the ability to recognize potential in others and to encourage growth in ways that feel supportive rather than demanding. Now, as we begin to conclude our exploration of these powerful psychological principles, I want you to understand that developing these habits is not about becoming someone you are not, but rather about understanding and cultivating the psychological capacities that already exist within you. Every human being has the potential to create deep psychological connections and to influence others in positive ways. The difference lies in understanding how these processes work and developing the skills to use them consciously and ethically. The integration of these 5 habits creates what I call a psychological presence that others find irresistible, not because of manipulation, but because it satisfies fundamental human needs that are often left unmet in our daily interactions. When you cultivate psychological mystery, you honor others' need for mental stimulation and discovery. When you practice strategic emotional availability, you provide connection without engulfment. When you engage in intellectual seduction, you make others feel intelligent and valued. When you offer selective validation, you help others feel seen and appreciated for who they truly are. When you embody psychological safety with challenge, you create the optimal conditions for authentic relationship and personal growth. These habits work synergistically, each one enhancing the power of the others. Together, they create a psychological atmosphere that others will find themselves drawn to again and again, not because they have been manipulated, but because their deepest psychological needs have been understood and met in ways that feel both natural and extraordinary. I want to acknowledge something important as we reach the end of our time together today. The journey of developing authentic psychological magnetism is not always easy. It requires honest self-examination, the development of emotional skills that our culture often does not teach, and the courage to engage with others at levels of depth that can feel vulnerable and uncertain. You may find yourself questioning whether you have the capacity to develop these qualities, whether others will respond positively to your efforts, or whether the investment of time and energy will prove worthwhile. But I want you to know that this work is some of the most valuable personal development you can undertake, not just for its effects on others, but for how it will transform your own experience of relationship and connection. When you develop these psychological capacities, you will find that your own relationships become more satisfying, that you attract people who are capable of deeper connection, and that you develop a sense of confidence that comes not from external validation, but from knowing that you have something genuine and valuable to offer others. If you have found value in these psychological insights, if you recognize the potential for transformation in your own life and relationships, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and to share this video with others who might benefit from understanding these principles. Each time you engage with this content, you are taking a step toward developing the psychological sophistication that will enhance every area of your life. you are also supporting the creation of more content that explores the fascinating intersection between classical psychoanalytic theory and practical relationship dynamics. Remember that developing authentic psychological magnetism is a practice, not a destination. Each interaction provides an opportunity to apply these principles more skillfully, to understand others more deeply, and to create connections that satisfy both your own psychological needs and those of the people around you. Give yourself permission to learn gradually, to make mistakes, and to celebrate small victories as you develop these profound psychological capacities. Your willingness to engage with these ideas, to consider the possibility of transformation, and to invest in your own psychological development is itself a sign that you possess the awareness and commitment necessary to create the kinds of connections you truly desire. Trust in your capacity for growth. Be patient with the process, and remember that every step you take toward understanding and applying these principles brings you closer to becoming the psychologically magnetic presence you have the potential to be.